everybody. Welcome to our Managing Change presentation. This is part of the Lunch and Lead series that we've been working through. Normally these presentations would be in person. We'd have you meet us in the Tivoli somewhere, we'd eat some pizza together, and we'd chat about managing change. Well, all that has obviously changed, right? So a very ironic topic that we get to talk about today, but nonetheless, we are excited and hope this video provides you with some good information and gets you ready for some potential organizational changes you may be experiencing. My name is Megan Rankin. I'm one of our career counseling interns over at the Career Center in Links Connect. Today, I'll be working with Rick. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I think you got it. I'm Rick. I work at the Career Center. I'm a career counselor there.
Hey, Rick. So today, like I mentioned, we'll be going through a managing change presentation, and feel free to pause this video at any time. Go back if you don't hear something, anything like that. That is the beauty of having this recorded, is you have a little more control over the presentation. So we'll jump right in with a quick agenda. Before you even begin watching some of this material, we ask that you have a journal or a pen, piece of paper, a pencil, whatever works well for you. These materials are really going to be handy as we do a couple activities later on in the presentation. It's also a great way for you to be able to take notes. So before you do anything, go ahead and pause the video right here and go collect that materials for yourself. All right, we'll jump right in. The first thing we get to do together, look, Rick got his pen and paper.
I'm ready to go. See, I'm always ready to go.
Lead by example. I love it. First thing we're going to do is Rick is going to actually take us through a modified version of a Kahoot, something we wish we could have done with you, but we'll make it work. Kind of get the juices flowing, get our brain ready to talk about change. Then I'm going to actually move in, talk a lot about the 8 stages of change from the Kotter method. So we'll give you some background on who John Kotter was, go step by step. Sprinkled throughout, Rick and I have a couple personal examples we'll be sharing with you, make this material a little more lively, and we'll finish out our presentation with some group work, kind of a worksheet style activity. This is going to also act as your participation for this Lunch and Lead series, so stay tuned for some of that. So without further ado, Rick, I turn it over to you.
Okay, cool. So in a typical Kahoot, you would log into the Kahoot site, but we can't do that right now because it's a recorded video. So we're going to do it via slides. And all you're going to have to do is just kind of in your mind select one of the options, and then we're going to reveal to you what the right answer is. So let's go ahead and get started. Question number 1, it's about change. Change means being what? Flexible, caring, goal-oriented, or efficient? Which one do you think it is? I'm going to give you about 5 seconds here. Which one do you think? All right, what's the answer? Let's see. It's all of them. What? How is it possible that it's all of them? Well, it's all of them because of something called true colors. True colors is something that we use at the Career Center. We've also done a lunch and lead on true colors. Next time we'll try and get it on video so you guys can see that too. But if you know what your personality type is, you actually have a couple traits in there that are leadership traits, things that you can use to create change and manage change. And so on certain teams, maybe being flexible and straightforward is actually more useful than being efficient and fair focused, okay? So depending on what kind of person you are, that's the type of change that you're probably going to bring. Let's go to the next question. All right, next one. Planning for change requires what? New ideas and being hands-on, cooperation or supportiveness, coordination and data collection, or diagnosing and solving of problems. Which one do you think? Megan, which one do you think it is?
I don't know, Rick. Should we go to the next slide and figure it out?
Yeah, let's find the answers. What are they? Oh my God, that's all of them. What is going on? Yeah, once again, this is part of True Colors. So all these different ways of creating change and planning for change are valuable. It's what we have to come together as a team, right? Sometimes you need those coordination and data collection people to be the ones to lead the change, but other times you need that cooperation and supportiveness too, okay? So everybody's going to work together. That's why you want to have well-balanced teams. Now, this next question, there is going to be a right or wrong answer. So next question is, as the team leaders, we should communicate team values, establish new team goals, consistently change things, or help develop team rituals. Pick one, 5, 4, 3, choose wisely, 2, 1. What is it? Okay, so there's two right answers here. There's communicate team values and there's help develop team rituals. Now I know that blue one, that established new team goals, that one sounds like it should be right. And it's not that it's wrong, but there's some more recent data, some more recent research showing that the best use of the team leader is not really to create the team goals. That's the team's job to figure out what they want to accomplish. The same thing with constantly change things. If you have a system that works, don't try and constantly change it. It's working. By all means, if there is a better system, if there is a better way, don't get stuck in your old ways. If there's a better way, look to try and change it and update it. So really your goal as being a team leader is to communicate the values of the team, the things that bring us together, the reasons why we're there, and also to help the team create some rituals. So like right now at the Career Center, we're doing these coffee meetings in the morning, right? We're all sitting around Zoom with our cups of coffee. We're trying to build a ritual that we used to do in the physical space, but now we're trying to do it still in person. All right, let's go to the next question. On a team, the best blank wins. On a team, the best blank wins. Is it the plan? Is it the SWOT analysis? Is it the investors? Or is it information and intelligence? Which one? All right, show us the answers, Megan. Oh, it's information and intelligence. What? It's so crazy. Isn't it the best plan? Doesn't the best plan win? Not necessarily. It's the best information and the best intel. When you, especially as a leader, if you can bring the right information, the right tools, the right technology, the right intelligence to your team, you let them play with it. You let them have fun. And that's actually what creates the best teams and what helps them win. All right, let's go to the next one. Planning for change is best when done in my head, done with the stakeholders' input, clearly written and put on paper, or when it has action plans that can be acted on. Which one do you think it is here? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What is it? It's 3 of them. Yeah. So this works best when you do have stakeholder income, when you know who your stakeholders are and you can communicate with them, right? You can actually make the right change. You can start planning for it. It also helps to write it down clearly on paper. So this is different than doing it in your head. Don't try and use your head as a filing cabinet. It's not very good at it. Things get lost in there all the time. And also make sure that that plan has action items, things that you can do, not kind of like these, you know, big picture goals that can be interpreted in many different ways. You want to say, hey, Megan, can you do this, this, and this? Hey, Stephen, can you do this, this, and this? Hey, Rick, can you do this, this, and this? Those are action plans. That's what makes the best plans for change. All right. Organizational change is easy in person, a multi-stage process. It's impossible online, or it's manageable online and in person. This might seem like a trick question. Which one do you think it is? Let's see the answers. All right, so we have it's a multi-stage process. Hey, that's what we're going to be talking about today. 8 stages of change. And it's also manageable. Now, it's not easy. It's never easy. It's not easy online and it's not easy in person, but it is manageable. Okay? See, sometimes life can throw you curveballs. It's all about how you manage those curveballs. It's about how you deal with it. All right, let's go to the next question to take on these slides. Go for it.
Thanks so much. So definitely different doing a Kahoot over a video, and hopefully you still understand, right? This is kind of what we're talking about, getting you thinking about team dynamics, getting you thinking about change, you know, adapting it to maybe a remote situation because that's what we're experiencing right now. But let's dive right in. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be going over the 8 stages of change based off of John Kotter's model. And we thought giving a little background on him would be really an awesome kind of introduction. So John Kotter is quite the decorated individual. He was a professor at Harvard in their School of Business. He was a professor of leadership. He taught for years. When he chose to no longer teach there, he actually opened his own business and he called it Kotter. In 2008, right when we were experiencing a pretty big economic situation, he thought, you know what? This world needs more leaders, and more importantly, needs education around how to be a leader. So on that screen, you see all the different books he has actually created on this topic. So when we say he's an expert, we mean it. And that's a great time for us to mention Rick and I aren't experts on this, right? There's only so much we can learn about this stuff, and we're going to do our best to present it to you. But if you've got more questions, definitely recommend visiting the Kotter website. I was scrolling through it in preparation for this, and there's so much information on leadership, organizational change, managing internal change, managing bigger change. He's got incredible YouTube series you can look at. So if this presentation really kind of gets you going, definitely check out John Kotter. We would really recommend that. Yeah. We're going to highlight just up front these 8 stages. We've got create, build, form, enlist, enable, generate, sustain, institute. These are kind of the big chunks that we'll be looking at. We break it into 3 different sections that I'll be covering. But again, as Rick mentioned, review this and understand this information in the lens of organizational change, not personal change. And a really important piece to this 8 stages of change model that I will reiterate multiple times throughout this presentation, you need to go through each step in a linear fashion in order to create a successful change. There is not well, I'll just move from step 1 to step 4 and forget about the ones in between. Nope. You need to be accomplishing each step bit by bit in a sequential order in order to see that successful change. So definitely keep that in mind as we're moving through. So without further ado, let's jump right in. 8 stages. We got change number 1. Create some urgency, right? So I want you to all know that in these first couple stages, we're not even actually doing much action just yet. You'll see the clump that we titled this in just a minute, but we're just looking to get the ball rolling. So we're looking for current vulnerability in the organization, right? If we want urgency to be created, we need to figure out what's going wrong. Why is change even needed in the first place? This could be, for a business, maybe you're losing ground, you're not making any profits. Maybe you're in a competitive market and you've got a new competitor that emerges and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, we need to step it up, right? We need to create some urgency for change here. We want to acknowledge right off the bat, it can be really hard to move people out of their comfort zone, right? Business as usual is a very comfortable thing, especially if change is happening in other places of the organization. It can be really challenging for anybody to kind of buy in. And so creating a sense of urgency by sharing maybe some of the deficits you're experiencing or highlighting some of your shortcomings in an organization, that's going to move people out of their comfort zone and create that urgency for you. If you're in this organization, you're noticing, the vulnerability isn't working, being frank and honest with them to move them out of their comfort zone isn't working. A third suggestion here is find someone who is outside of your organization to deliver that information. They can have the bigger picture conversation with all of those people. Sometimes information is better received when someone who's non-biased delivers that information, right? Maybe it's a consultant. I don't know what that would look like for your organization, but having someone else come in and say, listen, we need to make some changes. That could be a great way to get that urgency moving forward, all right? Then we move on to that second stage. We're forming a powerful coalition here. So the urgency is there, but who's going to help us create this change? So typically when we see that initial spark, it's about 1 to 2 people noticing it. Maybe it's accountants in the accounting department noticing it. Maybe it's supervisors noticing their employees aren't, reaching productivity level. It's not many people in that first urgency moment, but now we're moving into, all right, we got to build a team. We need to form a powerful coalition here to move this forward. John Kotter recommends about 3 to 5 people. That's usually a pretty good, solid group to start with. And I really want to add in here, don't just pick any 3 to 5 people. Don't just go to the office next to you. Don't just email the first person in your list. Pay attention to the reputation and the position when you're selecting those 3 to 5 people for that coalition. And here's the reason behind this, right? You want this change to occur. You want the people in that coalition to be able to instigate that change. Check out their power. Do they have any kind of say over the company? You know, do they have good standing in the company? If you send out your team of these 3 to 5 people to get the change moving, do those people have good reputations? Or is your company going to look at you and be like, those are the people you put in charge of this, right? So there's a couple things to be considering here. That final piece for forming a powerful coalition, look at the skillness and the skill level of the individuals you create for that coalition. So do you have a core group of people that are skilled in making this change? Maybe you're making a change when it comes to a certain platform that you're using electronically, right? Let's take Handshake, for example. Our Career Center uses Handshake routinely. We didn't always use Handshake. And so when we made that change, the people in that powerful coalition, they needed to have knowledge of technology, you know, ability to use Handshake. They couldn't just pick anybody to form that, right? If they had just walked down and said, hey, you work at the Career Center, you can be in this coalition, but that person had never licked at Handshake, they're not going to be the best person for the job. So aside from paying attention to the reputation and their position, check out what skills they bring to the table. Think back to that Kahoot, right? When we're looking at the true colors and who makes up a team, we really want to focus in on what each person brings to that table, all right? We move into our third stage here, create a vision for change. I want to talk about how we really haven't even done any action up until now. 3 full steps we're moving through, and we haven't really even mobilized yet. So the John Kotter article that we've been working from summed it up really well, and I want to read this for you all. When we create a vision for change, we're looking for a picture of the future that is relatively easy to communicate and appeals to customers, stockholders, maybe stakeholders if stock isn't a part of your company, and employees. A vision helps clarify the direction in which an organization needs to move. Why would we even have a vision in the first place? You know, this is kind of the point where you're like, why can't we just get to changing, right? We've done all this stuff. We've got urgency. We've got a great group of people. Before you move out and start mobilizing, you need to come together and have a decided upon structure of how you're going to move forward. So let me answer that question of why even have a vision. First, it's going to spark motivation, right? People are going to actually now be educated on what needs to change. They're going to buy into that change with you, right? Second, it's going to act as a filter for any decision you make, any change model that comes up later on. So maybe you get to a point where you're trying to decide between a certain strategy or a certain product or something. Having this change vision already written out can act as a filter to run that decision through and hopefully ensure that that decision is made appropriately and the best one is made. Last but not least, it's going to be your rationale, right? Why even do what you're doing if you don't have a vision? So maybe it's starting to get hard. You're really realizing, wow, change is a big deal. Having that vision to look back to is going to help rationalize some of the efforts and maybe blood, sweat, and tears that are going into it. To kind of round out this need for a vision, John Kotter recommends what we call the vision test. So you've written it up and you're like, is this even good? Would people even buy into this and use it as a motivator, use it as a filter, use it as a rationale? Use the vision test. So what you do is you find someone who's not familiar with what's going on, and 5 minutes or less, you try to explain what you're trying to change. As you're going through that, the first thing you're looking for is understanding. Do they even know what the heck you're talking about, right? Are you asking for change that is astronomically outside of their comfort zone and knowledge? Maybe check back in. The second thing is, are they even excited about it? You're looking for excitement in someone else, right? So that vision test is going to kind of help you gauge, do we need to go back to the drawing board and redo the vision? Or did we actually communicate it and write it down pretty well to the point where we have understanding and excitement? Time to move forward, all right? So let's take a minute, kind of put this all together. This is going to be our first chunk of these 8 stages, and we call it creating a climate of change. So first off, you start with your agency. You've got your coalition that comes behind you. Then you get your vision on paper. So again, little to no action in these first couple steps. But if you want to introduce a change, you need to have an environment that's ready for change, right? You can't just all of a sudden dye your hair one day and expect everybody to be like, hey, nothing's different, everything's great, right? Create a climate for change. You're talking about, oh, I'm thinking about going and buying some box dye today. I want to change my hair. You're asking for recommendations on how to buy or change your hair, right?
Yeah.
So creating that client and that environment for change is going to be the way that makes it most successful. And again, I want to add right here, you can't move on to step number 4 unless you've successfully
Mhm.
completed steps 1, 2, and 3. And this, creating that climate for change really drives home the point. This is a totally linear process. You have to go bit by bit. So
Right.
to kind of hopefully make this material a little more relevant, I'm going to turn it back over to Rick, and he's going to share a little bit about some personal experiences in creating a climate for change.
I just thought of something while you were talking, because the way that you were describing it, I thought about a moment in history where this is just a perfect example. So everybody knows about Martin Luther King Jr., right? Was there urgency?
Yep.
Yeah, there was huge urgency to create change. Did he have a coalition? Yeah, he built the coalition.
Right.
But his most famous speech, what's it called? I have a dream. Not I have a plan. It's I have a dream. I have a vision for change. So you need those things. And then afterwards, people were able to start making some of those changes. So in my story, I do have kind of an example from my personal life that I want to share with you. Um, and I'm in one of these pictures here. I'm in the second row. I'm behind the guy with the red shirt. But I want to tell you a story about me from 2008. So this was quite a while ago, I guess. But I was a recent graduate from college. And 2008, the economy crashed. The world was a mess. I mean, it was a train wreck. Paychecks they were melting away. I used to actually make the analogy that the times and work was like a snow cone, and that when you're holding a snow cone out in the sun, it just starts melting away. And what are you left with? You're left with like a just a little piece of paper and a bunch of just stickiness. It's kind
Gross.
of icky, right? It's gross. So it was not a great time. But anyway, I had in college been part of this on-campus initiative um, for to create these living learning communities, and this was back when living learning communities were really starting to take off and really starting to take hold. And in 2008, I saw that there was a need to keep the one that I was a part of going, but funding was being cut. So there was vulnerability there. And so I tried to take control of something that I could possibly do. Remember, I had graduated. So what I did was I actually kind of volunteered to help out with this weekly service project where we would go, all these people down here in this picture, we would go downtown Austin, Texas, and we would feed 120 homeless people coffee, sandwiches, bananas, eggs, tortillas, right? We would bring this breakfast to them and just give it to them. And I managed this project, but I went into it thinking, I'm going to manage this and I'm going to meet the right people because I don't know if this program's going to continue. So I got to meet the right people. And lucky for me, I was able to meet those people. I met Larry. Larry's the person over here in this black and white picture in front of this big, gorgeous doors. You can also see him in the kneeling down in the other picture there. So I met Larry. I met John. I met Patrick, I met Steven, and these are all people that had 30 plus years experience in the field, right? I was, who was I compared to them, right? But together we kind of created this new vision and we proposed it to the university. We pitched it to them, and guess what? They said yes, right? So in this, if I could summarize, in this, there was the urgency, and part of it I did kind of create. I said I want to take care of this. I want to make sure this continues. I'm gonna do whatever I can. Create a coalition. Find the right people. Make sure those people have the right skills. Not everybody has the right skills. And then third, create a vision. And the new vision was a long-term vision that was sustainable that they could really buy into. So that's my example.
Right on. Thank you. See, so this stuff is happening in a lot of parts of our lives. We just need to check in and kind of see what's going on, right? And see if we can identify some of it. So let's move into that 4th stage. Y'all, we're excited. This is when things really get to start kicking off, right? So that 4th step is communicate the vision. You just spent so much time getting that climate for change ready. You've got your vision all written out, and it's time to communicate that. So think about your best strategic plan, what efforts you're going to go through. Is it emails? Is it flyers? Is it tabling events? Is it social media platforms? How are you communicating that? Multiply it by 10. John Kotter says, just go big. What strategic plan you have set, make it even bigger. Don't stop on anything, right? Don't limit yourself here. We really, really want this vision to go out, right? Use every channel and opportunity possible. Don't just do one email, oh, that's it, include it in your staff meetings, include it in your emails, include it in your bios, and whatever that looks like. Every channel possible is a great opportunity for you to be talking about it. Someone asks you about it in your office, hey, you got a couple minutes, I'd love to share a little bit more about you, right? Don't shy away from opportunities to share it if someone has questions. So again, getting those efforts really out there. Another wonderful way, if you're like, well, we've multiplied our efforts, we've talked about it as much as we can, walk the talk, right? We always talk about they walk the walk, they talk the talk. We want to see those people, that 3 to 5 people in that guiding coalition, the leaders of the change, the people that have created the vision, actually living out the change they are proposing. What this does is it shows those around them like, yeah, they're really serious about this. They're actually making the change in themselves first before the organization is required to change along with them. So a great recommendation for communicating the change: walk the talk, right? Do what you got to do to show people around you. We mean business here, right? So let's move on to step number 5 here: empower action. We've gotten the word out. We're ready. Rubber's meeting the road, right? Empowering the action looks a little different depending on where you're at, but some basic tenets still apply. So create time and space needed for that change, right? I'm sure you've all been in situations where they're like, oh, we're going to do this big, massive overhaul. This is going to change here. We're reorganizing. And it never happens. There's 2 to 3 weeks where there's really great momentum, and then it just falls flat, right? All of the other necessities in your organization come up front. You don't have the money for it. Your staff is overworked, whatever that looks like, right? It's going to happen. And so, but as you start empowering action, create space and time for this. So maybe that looks like freeing up certain employees so that your responsibilities can shift towards this change. Maybe it's moving the budget around to make sure people are getting paid properly and you have the funds to support this, right? Be looking around and see, how are we going to make this change actually fit, right? Because the organizations can't just take everything on. Some things need to go. As you're moving things around, look at some barriers. Take some time to brainstorm with the people that are in your coalition, maybe people that are in the organization. Maybe it's that outside consultant that was giving you the big picture, right? What barriers are going to stand in your way? Anticipate as many as you can, big, small, medium. Be thinking about what could possibly come up and plan for them, right? Maybe you do know that your budget is tight. You've created as much space as you can in it, and you're anticipating a bigger barrier. Is there something else you can move around in the budget, right? Being aware of those barriers is going to make it a little less scary when they do pop up, because you're like, oh, we've already thought about this, right? Instead of being completely blindsided with it. So that's stage number 5, empowering action. Let's talk about stage number 6, create quick wins, right? So as you're moving through this, y'all, we're already at stage 6. You're probably pretty tired with your organization, right? Y'all have been working really hard. There's been a lot of back work to make this happen, things going on behind the scenes. You want to feel like you win, right? So when you're moving forward with your action plan, design intentionally small little goals that you can meet along the way to feel that sense of like, oh, the change is happening, right? You need to create space and time for you to look back and be like, okay, change is possible. Look at what we've already done this week, right? Don't make them superfluous. Don't make them everybody's going to show up to the meeting, right? Make them intentional, but don't make them gargantuous. Don't make your one goal, we're going to accomplish this by this day and that's it. Give yourself little wins over time, right? Ensure momentum keeps moving, right? You want to keep that excitement. You want to keep people, buying in and like, okay, we can do this. Goals that are achieved early help people see the improvement, right? You're walking that talk. They're like, oh, this change really is happening. Look at these small little goals that we're seeing. This can also be a great thing if morale gets low. Maybe you do hit one of those barriers, one of those roadblocks come up and you're like, oh, that felt like a sucker punch to the gut. Reflect back on what you've already accomplished, right? Remind yourself, yep, we knew this barrier was going to come, but look at everything else we've already accomplished. That's going to keep you in that positive mindset moving forward, all right? So let's kind of recap, put this all together. This is going to be our second chunk. This is enabling and engaging the organization. In that chunk, we had communicating the vision, empowering the action, creating quick wins. So this is definitely the more action-oriented part of these 8 stages. You've gotten your environment created, and it's time to get moving with it. Again, I'll say it, I'm like a broken record. You can't skip any of these steps. If your environment for change has been created, don't cut yourself short here and skip out on these next steps in chunk number 2, right? You really want to make sure you're moving your organization along successfully. You've put in a lot of work, right? You don't want to give that up for missing a step right here, okay? So I'm actually going to share a little bit of my personal experience with this second chunk. And this is about my very first job I ever held. I was still in high school. I was a sophomore. I had just gotten my driver's license. I was so jacked up. And it was like, all right, Megan, it is time for you to go get a job, right? Gas is not free. You need to figure out how you're going to pay for that. So I actually accepted my first job at what's called the Wellness Mart. I had a buddy, her dad owned it. She's like, you want a job? I said, why not? I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life just yet. Medical sounded like a great place. So in this job, it was a beautiful example of enabling and engaging the organization. So this doctor's office was originally, all right, go with me here, all paper, right? Any chart we had, any form we had, everything was paper. We did not have a system for electronic submission just yet. The doctor that was in charge of this realized that's a really outdated thing, right? An urgency was created. He put together some people. He created a vision for change. And then you know what he did in order to create space and time? He hired me. The whole purpose of bringing me on as a young sophomore was to be the person that scanned every paper document we had into an electronic format. Yes, I'm going to acknowledge it took me forever. It was really challenging, y'all. I'm not going to lie to you. And that was the Wellness Mart's way of ensuring this organizational change was successful. They'd gone through steps 1, 2, and 3. They were going through 3, 4, and 5. And I was a huge part of ensuring people's jobs were freed up to do this. They had the money to continue to pay for me. And I want to check in a little bit here about the goals, right? So obviously I knew that was my goal, is to move. Y'all, I'm not kidding. When I walked in that first day, it was like an entire room stacked full of boxes. And I looked at it and was like, you want me to finish this by the end of the summer? Oh, okay, that's going to be really hard. And I noticed that big goal at the end of just get it done. I wasn't feeling motivated a couple weeks into it. And so I started creating weekly goals for myself. Okay, by the end of week 3 in this job, I will have completed 3 boxes of paper files into an electronic version. Great. Well, I was working every day of the week though, and I started realizing that's not enough. By Wednesday, very classic hump day, I was like, dude, I'm over this. So I had to start creating daily goals for myself. By lunchtime, I'm going to have this many papers scanned electronically. By the end of the day, I'm going to have this. So that by the time I was getting to Friday at the end of my week, I was like, wow, look at how many awesome goals you've already accomplished throughout this, process, right? So it kept my momentum moving. It made me really feel like, yeah, I think I can do this. So again, think back to certain times in your jobs and organizations, be it student organizations, classes, whatever that looks like, organizations on campus, right? There's probably a lot of these different chunks already happening. You just might have missed the first part, but now you're involved in the second part, right? So now Rick's going to share a cool example from his life also.
I don't know if mine is cooler than than yours,
Just
but you guys can see some pictures here, some people doing some activities. So mine kind of goes back to my first year working at CU Denver. It was 2016, and that was in my first year. I think it was like December, maybe November, when this kind of all started. I wanted to create a workshop series that was based on some card sort activities that we use at the Career Center. The pictures for this one are the motivated skills card sort, and it kind of helps you figure out your strengths and your weaknesses. And what I had noticed was that I was using these card sorts a lot in my one-on-one appointments, and that oftentimes it's what was giving me my best results, right? So my students, my clients were leaving feeling really energized and really motivated and really excited. And so I partnered up with someone. I talked to my supervisor, tried to create a coalition, right? And we came up with kind of a vision for how we could use these card sorts to help students all over campus kind of figure out who they were. And we took this idea, took this vision, and I went out and I pitched it. I pitched it to advising teams. I pitched it to my team. I pitched it to faculty. I mean, I pitched it to anybody that would listen. I pitched it to the wall if the wall was listening, right? And we got some mixed responses. Some people said it won't work. Some people said, oh, it takes up too much time. Some people said, oh, our students aren't interested in that. No. Some people said lots of things. And then other people said, you know what, go for it. Try it out. Some people even said, we trust you. We trust you to make it happen. We trust you to make it work. So make it work. And they gave me some guidelines and they gave me some support to develop it, right? They essentially were empowering me to take action. They were empowering me to kind of take control and go forward. And at the same time, with my kind of enthusiasm for it, I was empowering them to spread the word and share the idea and kind of advertise it around campus. And we knew that we were not totally sure if it was going to work out, if it was going to achieve the result that we wanted. So what we did was we did a pilot run. Before we even had all of the presentation slides and everything ready, we went ahead and we did a pilot run. And so I think it was, if we fast forward now to like February of 2017, we started with the workshop. And we did 4 workshops, a series. And like I said, we didn't really have everything fully created, but we learned from it. We went ahead and we took action, and we got those quick wins. And the next time we did it around, starting up the next fall, we made it even better. And then in the next spring, we made it even better and better and better. But that's going to be the future stages that that Megan's going to talk to you about in the next coming slides.
And yep, y'all, hang in there. We're at stages 7 and 8. We are so close to being done. You've made it this far, right on. So stage number 7, build on that change, right? Acknowledge the long haul. It's kind of what Rick was talking about, right? We know that change can take a really long time. It could take years, y'all, 5 to 10 years, depending on the size of your company, depending on what you're even trying to accomplish, right? It can be really hard. And letting people know as the guiding coalition, hey, look, we get it. This is hard. That communicates transparency. All of a sudden, they're like, okay, you know what? These leaders aren't asking us for these gargantuan, tasks without acknowledging this is really hard. So keep your team on your side by just saying, hey, I get it. This is hard. We know it's going to take a little while. As you're building on that change, right? Maybe you're like the pilot, like Rick was talking about. You had your first test run, you're at your second test run, you're at your third test run, right? You're doing it. You're really moving through this stage, whatever that looks like. Watch out for tradition here, okay? We know that organizations have long-standing traditions. It can feel all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, we're stalling. This isn't working again. I don't know how to move my team forward and keep that momentum going because we're noticing some traditions are coming back in, right? We notice a lot of times when people get stressed out or they get overwhelmed, they go back to what they know best. And if it's that tradition, you might lose some of the groundwork that you've covered all the way up until now. So definitely be aware of them. Those can come up in, that some of your employees have. It can come up in the company culture, how y'all talk to each other and stuff. So definitely know that tradition is part of it. And maybe when that part comes up, when you're noticing tradition is seeping in, when you're like, man, this is really taking forever, John Kotter recommends focusing on the details of the process. So if we could sum up building on change, this is your action item of focus on the small details, the process, the step-by-step things that are happening each day to make this change, and really investigate them, pull them apart, get that really big picture honed into a small piece, right? Because remember when we were creating a vision, it was pretty big, right? This is the part where it gets a little more tedious. It's really hoping this becomes solidified in your company's culture. It's a great time to check in and just go piece by piece and focus in on the attention. This is going to really ensure that change affects all aspects of your organization. It's in our emails, it's in our phone calls, it's in our conversations in the break room, right? Really infiltrate this process when it gets a little bit slower, all right? Oh, y'all, we've made it to the last step. We are making it stick, right? We've made it through the long haul. Hopefully you've looked at some of those details. This is when you get to turn around, look at your team and be like, look at what we have done, right? We're focusing back in on, some of those short-term goals, but maybe more your long-term goals have been met. Awesome. Focus in on those. Remind them about that. This is also a great time to really make the connection for your organization of this was the change we wanted. This was the result we're looking for. This is how we did it, right? Make those connections obvious for them. Maybe it's behaviors you're noticing that have shifted. Call those out. Maybe it's your profits have increased. Show them those margins. Let them know. Your outcomes are really, really important to connect for your employees, because they want to see like, wow, that hard work was really important. And here's why, right? As we're trying to make it stick, we're also focusing on passing the torch, right? We understand that not everybody sticks around in organizations, maybe as long as we would want them to. People come and go, right? Leadership change happens, you create new positions. Ensure that the people you are hiring are also understanding the changes that we're asking of them, right? Pass that torch down. If your leadership, your 3 to 5 people in your guiding coalition, they kind of phase out, maybe it's retirement, maybe they take new job opportunities, maybe they graduate, whatever your organization structure looks like, ensure that the people that follow up behind them are also aware of the change and what needs to be done. Bring them up to speed, and pass that torch off to them. And this final step, y'all, ingrain the change, make it stick, right? We want this change to not just be, well, it's something they're asking me to do, but rather this is how we do it now. We used to do it like this, but this is what we do now because we've seen why this change is important. We've seen the improvements. The leadership, despite changes, have actually continued it, right? Our company is feeling empowered. We've made changes, right? Ingrain that change into your organization. So let's look at that last chunk together. This is going to be our third chunk, implementing and sustaining change, right? This is maintenance. This is, you've done a lot of the good work. You just want this to continue. Make this new change your business as usual. Your efforts of making change, it's going to shift a little bit, right? You're going to put your efforts more into, this is part of our company now. This all is revamped now. Your energy shifts just a little bit, but what an awesome thing to look back at. Depending on what your timeline looked at, I'm sure there's a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears that went into making it. You get to celebrate a little bit right now, right? Implementing and sustaining change is a great place for you to be like, man, we did it, all right? So in this kind of summing up this last chunk here, Rick is going to share another example about when implementing and sustaining change really happened.
Cool. Yeah, and this is a more recent example, I'd say, but it's definitely this one kind of fits into all of them. But the very last piece of the story is I think what's most important. So these are pictures from kind of a mock interview day that we at the Career Center did for students who are part of the Boots to Suits program. They're student veterans, and they go through a program called Launch. Now, Launch was created by a teammate of mine at the Career Center who left. Oh, he left in 2017, and it still pains me. I still miss Scott. Anyway, when he was leaving, my manager kind of voluntold me, "Hey, you're going to take on Launch." And there was a purpose for it. The purpose was I had helped Scott. I had helped Scott early on with the piloting of it. I had helped him create his early wins, right? So because I knew a lot about it, it was passed on to me. Now, what Scott had done was he had established these really strong relationships with the CU Denver office for veteran and military student services. And right, I had just helped him pilot it. And Launch is kind of like this 5-6 week job search and career readiness program. So it's really kind of complex, and we were doing some like data gathering about how useful it was, what was working, what was not, what the outcome was at the end, if people learned something. And while I knew things about the program, I didn't necessarily know the people on the veteran and military services side. So that was all Scott, and now he was leaving. And so with him leaving, the first thing I knew I had to do was I had to reestablish those relationships. I had to meet some new people. And after meeting with them a couple times and really getting to know one another, we saw that we had similar values. We started moving in the right direction, and we did something that was necessary. We reevaluated the existing program. We reevaluated the program and we outlined kind of our future steps. Okay, and we looked at all of our data. We looked at all of our surveys to create this new direction. And then the following spring is when we started implementing some of those next steps. We implemented more structure into the sessions because that's what students said they wanted, more structure. And then after spring, we looked at some more data and we looked at more surveys. And we found that the students were saying, well, now we want more accountability. And we want even more structure. And so what do you think we did? We added more structure and more accountability. And what we found is that if we actually move the program from the spring to the fall, it gives them the accountability and it gives them the structure that they're wanting. And 3 years later, now we're running as smooth as we've ever been. And the program has grown from 7 students in one little small meeting room to we had 32 students at our last in our last launch class or course. So the outcomes and reviewing the outcomes really allowed us to make it stick. And I really think that even if I were to pass this on to somebody else, it kind of go the same way. Develop some new relationships, reevaluate the program, find the strengths of the current presenter or teacher, and make it stick. Continue making it grow.
Right on, right on. All right, folks, we did it. We made it to the end. Rick, would you like to walk us through kind of our recap here?
Sure. I mean, it's really simple. We're just gonna go ahead and go to the steps, right? So number one is create that urgency. Create the urgency. If no one else sees it, maybe you have to be the one to create the urgency, right? Form a powerful coalition. So by creating the urgency, find the people that are just as energized as you and stick to them like glue, right? And then together, hopefully you can create a vision. Now, sometimes remember, depending on your personality, you might be more of a vision person and somebody else is more of the planner. That's cool. You can kind of split the task like that, but it usually works better when you really lean into your shared values and you create a vision together. After that, we have the second chunk, which starts off with communicate the vision, right? So now that you have the vision, now you got to pitch it. Pitch it to everybody that listens. Seriously, pitch it to everyone, because the more you pitch it, the better you're going to get, the crisper it's going to get, and maybe even start off that way. Start off small so you can mess up, and then the higher you get in the chain or the ladder of people that need to hear it, you get better and better and better. This helps also with empowering the action, right? You want to start taking action and start building things, and make sure that you have quick wins. Make sure that at the end of the week you can have, wow, we really did that. We really accomplished that. Or at the end of the month, you can say, wow, we really made something out of this. And then finally, we want to build on the change, right? We want to continue to review it and make it better. And then last, we want to make it stick. The making it stick though, right? Making it stick will not happen if you skip some of these steps. It just won't. If you skip on the step in building change of reevaluating what you got, you're not going to make it stick. It's going to get old, right? It's going to be outdated and obsolete things like my phone, right? My phone is 2 years old. It's probably already obsolete. I've got to make sure to update it. I've got to make sure to make it new every single year.
Right on. Cool. All right, folks. So we're going to move into that activity that I had talked about.
Okay. So to wrap up, we have a worksheet for you to use. And we might be able to actually attach this to the description or give you a link to this worksheet. I'm not quite sure yet, but this is why we're putting it up on the screen. This is a worksheet that goes through those 8 stages of organizational change. And we're going to give you guys kind of a case study here that you can work through where you can use some of this worksheet, okay? Yep. So you can see that step 1 there is still establish sense of urgency, and there's some questions there for you to kind of reflect on, and you can answer those questions, right? So here's going to be your case study, okay? We're going to leave this screen open for a good chunk of time for you to read this and work through it, and feel free to pause it if you want to pause it. But the general story here is there's this guy, Taylor. Taylor goes to an institution, a college institution, and he's just taken a course that has really changed his life, and he's wanting to do something for his community and especially for the people on his college campus. And so he's trying to find a way to make some change. And Taylor comes to you, his friend, his trusted friend, trying to create a coalition probably, and he needs your help. So use the worksheet the best you can to try and give him that help. Now I'm going to try and be quiet now so you guys can read the case study, and Megan and I will try and just hold it back. You guys can be reading the screen. All right, remember you can pause this anytime you want. So let's go ahead and go back to the worksheet now. Once again, if you have access to the worksheet, download it, use it. If not, write down some of the questions here. Write down some of the questions and start thinking about them, right? Pause the screen and write them down. As you can see, not all this is going to be possible. Not all this is going to be possible just thinking about this on your own. So it might even be good if you reach out to some of your friends and you're like, hey, help me out with this. I got this fictional friend called Taylor. And maybe they can help you. But I definitely think that you guys can go through maybe the first step, the second step of creating the coalition, maybe even creating the vision, right? And in the creating the vision, you see the first bullet there, it says kiss. It doesn't mean kiss. It doesn't mean take your piece of paper and kiss it. No, it means keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid, right? That's what the second S is. Keep it simple, okay? We don't want to get too complex with our vision. This isn't, changing the world stuff. This is changing small things on campus or with your group. And I think you can come up with communicate the vision. I think you can figure out who you're going to tell, how you're going to do it. Is it going to be slides? Is it going to be visual aids? Are you going to tell them a story? How are you going to do it? You might even be able to do the empower others, okay? But those later stages, that's going to be really hard because you need to be able to take, excuse me, those later stages are going to be really hard because you need to be able to take some action, okay? So use the worksheet the best you can. Use the questions here because they are there for you to make it easier. All right, and we're just going to leave on this last quote by John Kotter. As you guys can see now, he's pretty impactful, and he has a lot of wisdom. If you want to, go back and read some of his books so you can get the full explanations of things. We only had about an hour here. And remember that leadership and the way that you lead, especially with change, it's not easy, but it is manageable. And 8 stages, 8 steps, it seems pretty simple to me. Okay, so while it's not easy, it might be simple if you follow the steps. Anything else from you, Megan?
Nope, just want to say thanks you all for tuning in and learning and going through the 8 stages of change with us. If you have more questions about this, if you're like, okay, I didn't understand any of this, or maybe you're going through your worksheet and you're like, wow, I actually have a great organization I want to use this with, come and hang out with Rick and I over Zoom at the Career Center, right? Go ahead and log into Handshake, set up an appointment with us. We love to talk about this stuff, and we love to get to know student stories and kind of see the ripple effect that some of these presentations can have. Maybe you're curious, in the beginning when Rick had talked about true colors, and you're like, I don't know what that means. I'd love to know more. We can talk through some of those concepts as well. So if any questions came up for you or anything, know that Rick and I are pretty easily accessible. Shoot us an email, schedule an appointment with us on Handshake. We'd love to get to know you and kind of see what this impact has had on you all. So with that, we say thank you. Hopefully you had some lunch with you. You enjoyed your lunch. You got to lead a little bit with us, right? And be sure to check out more videos coming soon for this Lunch and Lead series, all right? Thanks, y'all.
Bye, everyone.